just like that, with two hires in really only a couple of days, the AFC just got a whole lot better. Brian Callahan was hired by the Tennessee Titans, and Jim Harbaugh is hired by the Los Angeles Chargers. We're going to start by talking about Brian Callahan and the Titans because they're an AFC South team, a little bit more relevant to the Colts. You don't have to be a Colts fan to watch this show, but most of us are. And I'm going to, look through things through the lens of the Indianapolis Colts. But nonetheless, Brian Callahan, former offensive coordinator for the Cincinnati Bengals, has been hired by the Tennessee Titans. I really like this move. I don't know if I like the move to fire Mike Vrabel, but I certainly at least like the move to hire Brian Callahan if you accept the fact that the firing of Mike Vrabel is an absolute and something that's in the past. I think this is one of the better moves that they could have made, one of the better coaching options that they could have chosen to hire. He was a part of Cincinnati's meteoric rise to the Super Bowl, right? They were 4 wins. They had the number one overall pick. They took Joe Burrow. He got hurt in the middle of his first rookie season, and they had like 8 wins, something like that, which is still a massive improvement. And then they went to the Super Bowl the next year. They went to the playoffs. They made a deep run all the way to the Super Bowl, and they almost won it. They only lost by 3 to the Matthew Stafford-led Los Angeles Rams. Yes, his roster was very talented. He gets sort of discredited because of how great his players were, but he used those players in the best way he possibly could, right? And sure, Joe Burrow was on that team, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Joe Mixon. Like, the Bengals offense is very talented and very star studded, just laden with stars across the entire roster there. And so, sure, that's true, but still, Brian Callahan was able to engineer an offense that succeeded at a high level and even outperformed and outcompeted the likes of the Kansas City Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and the Bills. Joe Burrow, if I'm not mistaken, is actually 5-1 against those two quarterbacks. So it's been incredible. It's been an incredible run for Joe Burrow, for the Bengals offense, and for Brian Callahan. Now he moves over to the Titans. And what's notable about that is the fact that, as I was just saying, Callahan is an offensive minded head coach, right? Vrabel was a defensive minded head coach. That's important because typically when you have young quarterbacks like, I don't know, Will Levis, you want an offensive minded head coach who can help them grow, who can support them, can, create an offense, engineer an offense that's conducive to their strengths, maximize their potential. It's just better for young quarterbacks to be paired with offensive minded head coaches. So this move presumes it basically operates under the pretense that Will Levis is going to be their guy and their starting quarterback next year. And Ryan Tannehill is the backup or traded, an afterthought, whatever verbiage you want to use there. By hiring an offensive minded head coach, you're leaning into Will Levis and you're leaning into making this a more offensive minded team. And with the offense being primarily how you win games, right? You have Will Levis. It's not a totally it is a very talented roster. You got Derrick Henry in the backfield. If you don't have him, you at least have Tyjae Spears. DeAndre Hopkins is still there at receiver. They still do have great receivers in general. They have a great team. The Titans are undoubtedly a great team. Danico Autry on the D line on the other side. We can keep going, right? They have a very talented roster. They need especially an offense, and they need an offensive-minded head coach to maximize the potential of that offense. And I think that could happen. I think Will Levis is talented enough. I think Brian Callahan is smart enough, and I think they're going to work well together. And I think this team and this offense is going to work well together. And I think that next season you're going to be a whole lot more scared of the Titans' offense moving forward, in addition to their defense and special teams. And I think it really speaks to just how strong the AFC South truly is. You have the Texans, who just were 10-7 and won a playoff game. They're going to do that again next year. I think they're probably the favorites to win the AFC South. They're probably going to make the playoffs. They're probably going to win at least one playoff game. They're going to be a scary team. The Texans are in contention to win a Super Bowl at some point in the next 5 years. The Colts are close. I think that we are a playoff quality team next season. The Jaguars, of course, made the playoffs and won a playoff game as early as 2 years ago. Almost did it again last year. Weren't able to get there. They lost to, actually, the Titans in week 18. But the Jaguars, I wouldn't be surprised if they're in the playoffs next year. I would be surprised if the Titans were in the playoffs next year, but they're at the very least capable of knocking off some of these top teams and really disrupting and causing problems for teams in the AFC South. And for the Colts, for example, we beat the Titans twice, but one of those games went to overtime. Both of them were won by 7 points or less, right? That's concerning because I think this Titans team is going to improve. I think that games against the Tennessee Titans are not at all going to be a safe bet that we're going to win. It's going to be scary regardless. just like all division games really are across the league for the Colts and for every other team. But the Titans are very capable of winning some big games and really, applying some devastating losses to some of these teams in the division, out of the division, whatever it is. Now, with this move, adding Brian Callahan, maybe we see his father move over, Bill Callahan, and coach on the Titans as well. Maybe we see T. Higgins or some other players jump ship over to Tennessee. It's going to be interesting to see how the rest of this offseason goes for the Titans. They're going to be a better team in 2024 because of Brian Callahan. I don't know if they would have been even better with Mike Vrabel, but at least this offense is going to be more imposing with Brian Callahan as their head coach. The AFC South is great. It's very strong. And the Titans, even if they're the weakest link in it, they're going to be very strong and very dangerous as well. And I want to talk about Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers. It's not really Colts news. It's not AFC South news, but it's football news. And as a football fan, as a fan of the game, I cannot wait to watch Jim Harbaugh coach this Chargers team. It's a talented roster. Keep in mind, they went to the playoffs 2 years ago. They lost the Jaguars. It was that same year. They went to the playoffs 2 years ago. They almost won a playoff game. They weren't able to pull through in the end. This is a roster and they did all that with Brandon Staley, right? So this is a roster. This is a team. This is a composition of players that is capable of winning games late in the season, winning big games, beating good teams, beating the Chiefs, for example, going to the playoffs and almost winning a playoff game. They didn't go last year. They weren't good last year, this past season. But 2 years ago in 2022, they absolutely succeeded at a high level. They have the roster to do it. Most of that roster is intact. It's the same players they have now. Justin Herbert is at quarterback. He's incredible to watch. He's fun. He's great. He has a lot of potential. His receivers, you got Mike Williams over there. You got Keenan Allen. You have Austin Eckler in the backfield. This Chargers team is talented. They have some guys on that team that can really, you would not be surprised if you saw a lot of those players in the playoffs, namely, or particularly because we've seen that as early as 2 years ago. Jim Harbaugh, a proven winner, not just in college, but in the NFL. He brought the 49ers with Colin Kaepernick to the Super Bowl. He now comes to the Chargers, who have a talented roster. In a playoff-capable roster, I would not be surprised at all if the Chargers are in the playoffs next year, which is very fun and exciting, except for the fact that, you look at the 6 and 7 seed in the AFC, you start thinking about who maybe could occupy those spots. The Colts are a name that comes to mind. Maybe the Chargers come swooping in and steal our spot in the playoffs. I'm not necessarily predicting that to happen. I don't want that to happen, but it's possible. The AFC undoubtedly just got a whole lot better with the additions of Brian Callahan and Jim Harbaugh into head coaching roles in the mix here. The AFC South is going to be more, at the very least, dangerous with the Titans performing at a higher level. The AFC as a whole, maybe some playoff spots are stolen by the Chargers next year. They're very capable of doing so. And, maybe beating the Chiefs, winning some playoff games, winning the division. Who knows what their ceiling is? Both of these teams, their outlook for the next 5-10 years is very much improved now that you have Brian Callahan and Jim Harbaugh as their head coaches. And it makes life for every other team in the AFC, including the Indianapolis Colts, that much more difficult. Thank you for watching this bonus episode of the Colts Perspective. Feel free to hit like and subscribe if you feel so inclined. We have a video about the quarterback room for the Colts coming out on Saturday at around noon, hopefully. And hope maybe some more bonus videos the rest of the week. Tomorrow there should be a bonus video in the morning. Thank you very much for watching. Enjoy the offseason, the rest of the coaching carousel, and everything else this offseason has in store. Enjoy it all from the Colts perspective.